All you moonshiners, if you want to hear about the kind of booze.
Okay, we're back and ready to get started. I've got my test cylinder with my alcoholometer. You should be familiar with these by now. If you're not, this is the device you use to measure the proof of your spirits. And I just kind of leave that sitting in there. Don't drop it in there, it'll break. They're droppable once, and then you have to get another one. So just be careful with it. Now, I bring out the hydrometer just to show you, and remember that the hydrometer has no use here. So for all practical purposes, I'm showing you this just to make sure you don't get them mixed up and confused. Because the hydrometer is used for fermentation and preparing a wort or the lees for wine, and the mash for distilling. But the only thing that you can use to measure the alcohol content of a distilled spirit is the proof and trail hydrometer, which we call an alcoholometer. And what's interesting about it, and you'll know it right off the bat because the scale's 1.000, way up here on the top of this scale is where water is. That's what the gravity of water is. That's the data point. That's the start point. And if we put these two scales together, they would look like this. So you'll notice that your proof and trail hydrometer goes way, way below. It goes up, but it goes below 0 or 1.000 for water because alcohol is thinner than water. So that's why you can't interchange these things at all. If you interchange them, you'll notice it right away. You'll drop this into it and you'll see the difference. This thing will disappear on you in a heartbeat. This one should float. So I showed that to you. Let me set these aside because we're only going to use the proof and trail hydrometer, and that will tell us the alcohol by really it's by volume. It's proof or percentage. All right, we've got glycerin. I'll use glycerin at the very end, and it's about 2 ounces per gallon is a good place to start. Some will like their shine a little bit more conditioned, so you can add a little bit more. Some will like it a little less, so you add a little bit less. But the rule of thumb is 2 ounces per gallon. I put it in one of these squirt bottles, and that way I can squirt it in there. Now, this is made from it's a byproduct of an animal fat, and it's in every pharmaceutical. It's probably in more than 70% or so of your food products, anything. So it's totally safe for human consumption. You normally find it in your grocery aisle or in your grocery store, and a lot of times you'll find it in the medicinal area. So keep an eye out for it. It's glycerin, and it's also known, but goes by the name of glycerol. So glycerol, glycerin, they're both the same thing. But it is also the base product. And for those of you who've had liqueurs, ouzo, peppermint schnapps, and some of those real thick liquors, this is the base product for most of your liqueurs. All right, okay. Now, and you know that we're going to use medium toasted oat chips. We've got that. Look, I've got this. I'm going to move this out of the way because I've got one of two options here when it comes to my zero water filter. I just open it up and pour my shine in there, and I did that from this gallon. I had a half a gallon in there, and I poured that in here, and I just let it run through. It takes about 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes or so for a half a gallon. It may take a little bit longer. I just let it sit there. It runs into the bottom, and now you've got a spigot on the front where you can push the button and capture or collect your spirits from the bottom back into that same jug, or funnels come in handy. This is pretty sturdy and pretty durable, so you can just pick it up and you can pour it back in there. Let me set this aside, and we'll get to that a little later. You may or may not be here when I get to that, but we're going to get to it. All right, let's start with the first thing we're going to do is we're going to do some testing. You notice I got these 2 jars. This is the honey I ran on the oh, this is awesome. This is the honey that we ran through the Mighty Mini with the 2,000 watt heater element and the controller. Oh, it was amazing. It took about 2.5 hours. Okay. Now, I like to start off a lot of times with my hydrometer inside my test tube instead of dropping it in and spinning it, and then just pour my spirits right on top of the proof and trail hydrometer and let that float. Then when it starts to float, what I'll do is I'll give it a spin, And that takes all those air bubbles off the outside of it and gives you a little bit more of a truer reading. Now remember, these are calibrated at 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's about 73 in here today. So I'll be off a couple of percentages or a couple of proofage points. Look, I'm not that anal. I'm very anal and very close to making sure that we do everything right. But when it comes to this, if it's 83 proof or if it's 85 proof, the difference between those two is a little bit close. It's close enough to me for government work. So let's look here, and we are sitting at 180 proof. And I want to show you this. And you'll see that our proof and trail hydrometer, let's get you around here so you're, there you go. It's floating right at 180 proof. Now 180 proof, and you'll notice here you see the 90, that equates to about 90% alcohol. It is just below that 90% right now. You can see that. So what we've got to do is we've got to cut this from 180, we've got to bring it down to about 80%. Now there's a couple of different ways you can do this. Believe it or not, what I believe is the most direct method is to just pour, measure, and kind of know what you're pouring in. Now the question is there a formula? Absolutely there's a formula. Go to homedistillers.org, and there's every formula known to man there. So yeah, you can figure out what your alcohol by volume is, your percentage is here, and how much water you're going to add to it. You could do that and then pour that appropriate amount of water in there and come very, very close. Or you can use the method that I like to use in a lot of cases is, and I'm telling you, I know I've got to cut this at least in half. So, and I've got about a half a gallon here. So what I can do is I can start off, and now I can use either spring water, and some folks do like the taste of the spring water because it does carry over that character into your shine. Or if you're looking for that neutral spirit that you can do other things with, you just use regular distilled water. This is like 68 cents a gallon. And hey, if you got your own still and you got the time, run your own water. So let's just add this. And you'll notice what will happen initially is you get all these cloudy bubbles as these two substances start to mix. Now, what's happening is you've got a heavier substance known as distilled water mixing with a very, very light substance known as ethyl alcohol. And this ethyl alcohol by molecules are trying to make their attachment now. And as pouring this in here, I've introduced oxygen. And that oxygen needs to separate in order for those molecules to get closer together and collapse. And that's where all these bubbles come from. They're really, really tiny. There are millions of them. And they'll just start to move up and they'll dissipate and work their way out. And then it'll become a clear product again. And you see, in the time it took me to explain that, that's already happened. So, let's do this. Now, just for the fun of it, we're going to give it to make sure it's mixed up well. There we go. You know, the beginnings of the moonshine, which you could call the epidemic, or the affinity for moonshine started long, long ago, and it's really part of our American culture. It's part of your American heritage. And it really came from the immigrants. It came from Europe, and a lot of them settled initially up in Pennsylvania, in that area. And then, of course, south through the Appalachians. And what happened is this became a staple of life. It was a natural thing. It was something that was part of our culture. So it became a natural process that almost everybody did. And no one batted an eye at it because, you know, there were several different levels of this process that was going on. And it was also used as a commodity or as for exchange. So, you know, and they say that in the next apocalypse that alcohol is going to be the next legal tender. Of course, you can use it for a lot of different things. It has a great medicinal value. But then again, it was after the Revolutionary War, and I've got to show you this. We are at about 65, which brings us almost to, well, we're rated at almost 130 proof. So adding that much water only brought us down to 130 proof. So George is going to need another jug. So, you know, we fought the Revolutionary War in order to get away from taxes and unfair taxation without representation. And what is interesting, though, in it's like 1791, Alexander Hamilton, who was our first Secretary of the Treasury, and I'm just splitting this up now, was our Secretary of the Treasury, instituted the tax on distilled spirits. And there was an uproar. As a matter of fact, people were really, really upset because they had just fought a war, a revolutionary war against taxation. And here it was, 1791, and the government figured the way to pay for the costs of the war was to tax spirits. So there was what was known as the Whiskey Rebellion. And I'm quite sure y'all can remember that. No, you can't remember it, but you can recall of it. Through history. Okay, we're going to get that about the same on each one, because if I get one right, the other will be right. Okay, there we go. All right, we were down to 130 proof. So let's just, I poured almost a half a gallon in there. Let's pour about a pint or a pint and a half. And let's see where that brings us. All right, back to our same old process. We're going to shake it up just to get it good and mixed, and then we're going to allow those bubbles to dissipate. Oh, by the way, did you know Alexander Hamilton was one of George Washington's aides? He was appointed as a captain and moved up in the ranks rather quickly, but he was one of George Washington's closest aides. And incidentally, one of our most famous moonshiners and bootleggers, well, ran his own still, was George Washington. We've got that Washington's Rye recipe, George Washington's Rye, which is exquisite. So, okay, we're going to allow those bubbles to start to dissipate. There they are. They're dissipate. And you'll notice this thing clear from the bottom all the way up, and it clears out rather quickly. And it becomes pristine. So here we are. Let's pour some back in. Now we're going to find out what our level is. And we've managed to get it to 100. All right, we got a little further to go. So, and that's not a bad thing. Now, stop and think about this. For the effort that was put into this preparation, I think it took us maybe 3.5, 4 hours to run that. And then right now, I took a half a gallon of 180, and you'll notice here that I do have in excess of a gallon that I'm trying, and we're going to find out what the final result is here in a moment of what volume we have left over. Okay, now let's give this a try. Yeah, let's let those bubbles settle out for just a few minutes. So there you had it. You had the Whiskey Rebellion. You know, being part of our culture, this is all American made. It's an American process. Believe it or not, it's spreading quickly across the world. So I get calls from all over the world, and you might think that that's kind of strange, but it's not. And when I first got my first call from South Africa, I thought that was really weird, and I've got them as far away as Saudi Arabia. I've gotten calls from Russia. Go figure, they do make a lot of vodka there. But we've got customers all over the world, and so the practice of distilling and making your own spirits is growing and growing ever so quickly. And for a small shop like this to get a phone call from that far away, it does my heart good. I mean, I'm glad that people are out there and they're sharing our videos and they're sharing the website and people are getting interested. But it also leads me to believe that there are very few credible sources, and I would hope that you would consider this a credible source of information on this topic. Yeah, I was only at 90. I got to bring it down a little bit more. And evidently they believe that this is a credible source. So I'm kind of happy to have that kind of, not notoriety as much as people sharing this being a credible source, and I do appreciate it. So please, you're one of those who have shared us with someone else, please continue to do that. We only get better with time, and we learn so much as folks call in and write in, respond to the YouTube channel. Send us an email. And be looking out for barleyandhopsbrewing.net. We're going to be on about 300 bluegrass radio stations across the United States. There we go. We're at, it says here we're at like 84%, or 84 proof, I'm sorry. 84 proof. So we're going to leave it there. That's where we want to be. I'll pour that back in there carefully. And you know, when you start looking and you're going around and you're getting all this advice, and you know, there's so much to offer. You know, my dad always told me, he said, you know, never take cooking advice from a skinny man. I got to think about it. That kind of makes sense. I can partake every once in a while, but just be careful about who you take your advice from. There is a lot of disinformation, and I don't fault someone for having a desire or an affinity for the process. I just offer that it's really good to do some research. There we go, do some testing, and just make sure that whatever you're telling folks is accurate. And again, there are thousands and thousands of techniques. This just happens to be the one that I find most useful and the easiest for me to do, because I can remember it step by step. So I call it George's way. There are other ways of doing all of this, and there are also other ways of running your still. All right, here's one more shake. You notice I like to put flags on mine. To me, it's made in America. Made in America means something. Now, this should be the same proof, but I'm going to give it a check just to make sure. Yep, that's the same thing. All right, good. So now we've got two of these at about 86 or so proof, and we are ready to go to the next step. And our next step is to add glycerin. Now, you can add glycerin now. You could add glycerin later. My attitude is, let's get as much of what we've got to mix out of the way, and then allow the aging process to do its thing. Now, this is a little bit more viscous, and I've got 5 ounces in here. So I'll pour this in, and you'll notice that when you pour it in, it's going to be, you'll be able to notice it as it starts to mix. Okay, that was 1 ounce, and you may, see, it's already disappeared. It'll disappear rather rapidly as it starts to make its way through the rest of that medium. So let me see. Okay, 5. I got 1 more ounce to put in. Oh, just a little bit more. Okay, that's enough for that. And I'll put 2 ounces in that, because I'm one of those people that like it a little bit more on the conditioned side. I'd like it a little bit more smooth. You know that bite you get on the back of your throat when you're drinking a really good shine, you know that's what it is. That's not as appealing to me as it is to others, and if I can eliminate that and still get the same effect, I'll do that. To me, it makes it a whole lot easier for me to drink. But so that's what I do. I'll put 2 ounces in, and you'll notice here that I've got 2¾ of a gallon. It looks like I've got about 1.5 gallons of finished product that I'm going to be able to put my oak chips in, and then put inside the barrel. There we go. Gosh, I'm having a hard time getting that to go down. There we are. Okay. So here we have it. 2 jugs of 3/4 of a gallon, and I'll snip off the end of this bag. Here's George's measurements for 2 ounces. And again, it's 2 ounces of glycerin per gallon and about 2 ounces of chips per gallon. And I'm going to put the full just about 2 ounces in here. I can just about measure that by sight now. There we go. Now I'll allow these to sit in here, and what this will do is this will really smooth out that shine real quickly, but it'll also give it that golden hue that you're looking for. Oh, before I put it into the barrel, yeah, it's about the same amount. I'll only allow that to sit in there for about 4 days. After a 4-day period, 4 or 5 days, I'll strain that out, and then I'll put the rest of that into this barrel, and I'll allow the barrel to do the rest of the work. What I'm trying to do is 2 things here. One, I'm trying to speed up a little bit of the aging process, glycerin being an aging catalyst, and the oak chips being the very beginning of that process. And once I take advantage of what they have to offer, then I'm going to place it in the barrel and allow the barrel to do the rest of the work. Now here's what's really fun, is that you put this almost anywhere, and every time you walk by it, of course, you hold it up and look at it and you give it a shake. You're not going to be able to avoid that. You're not going to hurt it one bit. So if you walk by it and it makes you feel good, again, I always say, if it makes you giggle, do it as often as you possibly can. So I'll just give it a good shake every time I walk by it. And we'll allow that to sit for about 4 or 5 days. Now, that brings us to the next point. And our last point here is that I've got this 5-liter, and barrels are measured by liters, and that is it's a navigation, it's a shipping weight, or a shipping measurement. So this barrel will displace 5 liters. Inside this barrel will hold slightly less than 5 liters, but the measurement is by outside, how much room it displaces. And that's an old term that was used during shipping, when they were shipping on ships, and so they want to know what it would displace, and that's where it came from. So this 5-liter barrel will take about 6 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks for full 100% maturation. 100% maturation is probably a stretch, but it'll mature in that period of time. In the meantime, you can always open the petcock and taste it and check it out on its way through its process. Now remember, as the barrel gets smaller, there's more shine in contact with the surface area. That's why you rotate these every one or 2 days. Just give them a rotation, and that is just to make sure that it's in contact with the whole inside of the barrel. As they get smaller, that maturation time drops, and it starts to drop dramatically. You get to a 3-liter barrel, and it's about, a little 3.5 weeks. 3.5 to 4 weeks. You get to the 2-liter barrel or the 1-liter barrel, and it's not instantaneous, but it's pretty fast because you've got very little in there, but it's in 100% contact with the wood, and it's pulling the vanillins out of that wood. Now, at some point in time, yes, these will go neutral. And once they go neutral, my God, look, this is a $69 barrel with a stand and the petcocks and everything. Once they go neutral, you can open them up, rechar them. What you're going to have is you're going to have a really good barrel filter at that point. There's very little vanillins left. There are some that you can pull out of there, but very little left. Or you can just buy another barrel. I've run as many as 8 or 9 runs through a barrel before it becomes completely neutral. As it gets more neutral, you can leave it on your chips a little bit longer in order to make up for that loss or that lack of vanillins that are inside your barrel. You can make some wonderful things with these. You can make a clock. I mean, you can do a whole lot of things with these barrels. And if nothing else, you just toss it out. But just get a new barrel. For the sake of $69, it's not that much. So yes, this is a result-based video. So what I wanted to show you is this is like 6 hours later after we've gone through this process, and I wanted to show you what we have. This is 6 hours later with the oak chips, and you'll notice that now I've taken all the oak chips out of this one. This one is 110 proof, and I'm just about ready to put this in one of the barrels. This one's going to be, remember we talked about, this one's going to be a little bit hotter than the other ones. And of course, this one's earned our Made in America sticker. Oh, here you go. This is again 6 hours later, and you'll notice that golden hue. You'll see some of those oak chips are still starting to sink to the bottom. And that'll take place over the next couple of days, and I'm going to allow this one to sit for a lot longer. And that one has already earned our Made in America sticker. And then last but not least, our honey shine. And remember I talked to you about that. You can see those that are floating. You can still see through it, and they're starting to sink down to the bottom, and then we'll strain those out and place that in one of our small 3-liter barrels. And of course, now listen, if there are any questions, please get in touch with us. Again, I always say that share us with your friends. All of our products are American made or made in America. Be looking for our new website. If you have any questions, give us a call. Reach out and touch us via email, or like us on Facebook. Respond to this video right there on YouTube. You can respond to it. And if nothing else, please subscribe. One of these places, one of these corners has a subscribe button on it. Hey, we'll see you on the next run. Happy distilling.